Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday morning trading session. Hang on a second here. I'm still setting up my charts, but just a quick overview. It doesn't look like I'm missing a whole lot. The market has been exceptionally quiet. Oops. Let's get that down there. Before I forget, I need to leave early today. I've got to be somewhere at 8:30 this morning, so we're going to be buttoning up the session a little bit earlier than usual. And my apologies for the inconvenience, but it could not be helped. All right, so here we are. I was just looking here at the overnight. Again, non-existent really. The market was pretty quiet for the most part yesterday. We did finally see it tail off in the afternoon, only to rebound and head higher before the end of the session. So a very odd day. I guess the Asian session continued the rally a little bit. The London session pretty much non-existent. This might look like a little bit of an opening gap to the market this morning. We'll see. We're getting a red bar buy signal, or a possible red bar buy. It's still so early. Just a few opening minutes. What's interesting though is we don't really have a test of the extreme here. So it's very likely we should see the market rally at least a little bit. To get that red bar buy, that test of the extreme. I don't like taking a trade the first few minutes of trading though. Although you can hardly say that there's much dust to settle after the way the markets have been trading of late. In spite of the slow markets, this is actually a good time to learn, because you get a little bit of time to make some decisions. You don't have to rush, obviously. Well, let's see what's going on in crude oil. And not a whole lot going on in the crude oil market this morning. Yesterday, we did see the report come out, the market tail off a little bit, continued lower for the rest of the session, but right now, no, crude oil's pretty much stuck going sideways. So until they get outside of that range, it doesn't look like we're going to get very many promising crude oil prospects. Soybeans, here are soybeans on the Eagle. And they've been plodding higher. They tried to head lower yesterday. And then before the end of the session, they turned around and started to put in a little bit of a rally. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that, see if we get an opportunity. Good morning, Christian. Chris is asking, good morning, does DTS also offer a Forex trading room? You'd have to double check with Adam, but at the moment I think this is the only trading room that we're doing. There, Omar, and then I think the fellow's name was Mike or Mark, was doing a trading room during the overnight session, the Asian and European sessions, trading primarily Forex. But if there's a currency you'd like to see, I can certainly put one up for you. Now we're getting first micro macro cross here in the Hawk. Again, it's just, what are we in? About 8 or 9 minutes into the session. So we've got a first micro macro cross signal to sell. I think we're getting a sell signal here on the Falcon also. Yes, we are. So this is our trend change signal. It's, not without its share of risk. In fact, we're going to get a second push on that. I think what I'll do is I'll just throw a onesie on it, because it's the first trade. I don't want to get myself really behind the 8 ball, and I'm not entirely sure which way the wind is blowing in this market just yet. Maybe what we'll see is a retracement here to the hard edge. The only nice thing about a trade like this is we have a great place to cover the trade, right? We shorted here. If this market reverses, takes out these highs, well, then we definitely know we're on the wrong side of the market. You can see on our support and resistance lines here, we're trying to take a bounce off of the primary resistance. Hopefully that will send us back here to the median line. Looks like I should have taken that first micro-macro cross. It at least has traded low enough to find our profit objective. That's the nice thing about the hawk, of course, with the tighter profit target. I don't want to get too heavy into selling because, well, our Eagle band is still fairly bullish, right? We haven't really seen a test of the extreme in the hawk. Oh, or the falcon for that matter. Just this little itty bitty hiccup. What I'm waiting for is for the sellers to step up and show that they're serious about shorting. Just getting a very odd looking opening range. Here the hawk identifies it probably best. It's like this little sideways channel. So we know there's buying support here. We know there was some selling going on here. We're getting a macro pullback signal. Once again, no real test of the extreme. I think that's what we're looking at now, perhaps a test of the extreme. Well, here's crude oil working on a trend change signal. So we got our warning dots. Here's the move that moved the changed the trend line color. Here's the buyers coming back. Here's the sellers. Sellers unsuccessful so far in actually producing a signal. Let's see, would there be enough in here for a, well, I'd have to go with the regular $200 target, and I bet we could sneak, or pardon me, $100 target per contract. And we could sneak a trade in here before we get back down to this, what might be support on this trend line, but we don't have a signal just yet, just the warning dots. And it doesn't look like we're going to get a signal there the way it's going. Oh, look at that. They're, okay, sellers, you're going to have to dig in here soon. This would be a very good test of the extreme. Ay, ay, ay. We might have to start getting more aggressive and doing things like failures of macro pullback signals and things of that nature. Nuts. They just took out the high. Hit our stop. Didn't really give me a second chance to adjust my my stop, which is unfortunate. Okay, so they don't want to go lower. Let's see whether or not they're going to follow through on the buy side. Oh, is that what the deal is? Josh says we got some news coming out in about 10 minutes time. That would explain the extra sluggishness. Ricardo says, hi Eric, interesting that you've reverted back to a 12-tick cloud on the Raptor. I was getting too much static about it, Ricardo. People were looking at my Raptor saying, why does my Raptor not look like your Raptor? That's one thing about the Raptor is you can adjust the settings more than you can in some of your other tools. And for a while there, I was looking at an 8-tick cloud. I just thought it smoothed it a little better. I was getting a little bit more signals coming together in sync. What we're looking at is, we're looking at partly the signal generation, like the way the arrows print, and we're partly looking at the price action, right? We very rarely take a trade without considering the price action at least a little bit. Yeah, way to go, Ricardo. Ricardo says, I just entered the hard edge bounce on a 10-tick cloud, got 20 ticks off. Well done. Yeah, here, let's throw a 10-tick cloud on here then. We'll see what Ricardo was seeing. The signal was here also on the 12. I looked at it, but I was already short on the Falcon. Yeah, right there. So the hard edge, the bounce, here comes the buy signal. Good job. Gotta find my Geiger counter. There it is. Yeah, Ricardo says, I used 2 hard edge cloud settings, one at 8 and one at 10. Works quite well, actually, he says. Hardly any signals from the 12 tick. Well, the markets too are a lot slower than what they normally are. It's like we need a really strong cup of coffee. Thanks, Lance. Lance says the Philly Fed news up in 5 minutes. Expect some choppiness. Well, that would be a welcome change, just to see some movement. Yeah, you could be right, Lance. Lance says, I think that's why we're slow this morning. The market's waiting on the news. You're probably right. They're looking for some sort of spark, some sort of impetus to settle on a direction, whether it be higher or lower. Christian is asking a good question here. He asks one question: when the Nasdaq goes up, does that also mean that the U.S. dollar is strong? Yes, there is tends to be a direct correlation between the U.S. dollar and the value of the stock indices. It's not a one-to-one relationship. I think it works out to more like about a third or a half or something like that. So in other words, if the U.S. dollar goes up, the stock indices tend to go up about a third or a half the rally that you're seeing in the U.S. dollar. A lot of people think that the reason for it is because foreign investment, and before foreign investors can buy into the NASDAQ or the E-mini or other stocks, they need to first buy US dollars, right? So that makes the dollar more valuable and in turn increases the value of the stock index. But yes, there is a relationship between the two. Well, we're still not seeing any follow through on anything here. The way I see what's going on here is the market is still kind of in this sideways range. I know we're getting a macro pullback signal here, and I should perhaps get a little bit more serious about taking it, but the market has a very sideways flavor to it. Well, yeah, no follow through here in the NQ. Lance says the forecast was 11.9. It actually came in at 5.7. The problem with all these reports and forecasts, of course, is how the market is going to perceive them. The numbers, the absolute numbers themselves, don't mean very much. That's why they say a market will rally off bearish news and fall on bullish news, because the market will already have tried to factor in what it anticipates the report will be. And if it matches that perception, then it will, well, pretty much do what it has been doing, in this case, nothing. And if it catches the market by surprise, well, then it will move higher or lower accordingly, whether it's a good surprise or a bad surprise. Soybeans might be working on a red bar buy here. The signal has just tripped, but we might have a chance here to get onto this trade with a second push on the entry, which for slow markets like this is actually kind of desirable. And all the second push is we're letting the signal engage. We're letting the market retreat a little bit so that we have an idea as to what the current parameters of the market are. It helps us with things like this scenario here, where we're getting a buy signal and the market flips over. So this would have been our signal bar here. But look at what happens if we shortly had entered the market and probably covered it. Oops, can't cover it down there. Well, we'll pretend for a moment that we entered just above there, covered it down here, and watch what happens. The market turns on its heel and then comes right back down. So a very similar setup now in what we're seeing right here, where the market has engaged the signal, retreated somewhat, shown us the current limit. And so now if they're truly going to rally off of here, well, then we can look at buying in with them. But here too, this morning's trading has been very, very tight. This is all that we've seen here in soybeans, this tiny little swing right here. Ay, ay, ay. Lance says he never tries to predict the direction based on news, and he prefers not to be in the market about 10 minutes before the report comes out. You know, one thing that amazes me about DTS is how accurate it can be, even going into reports. We've noticed that on the crude inventory, that a lot of times the DTS system will produce the signal before the report comes out, and I mean well before the report comes out. And the signal will actually be in the right direction. I don't know why that should surprise me, but yeah, it's almost like DTS is taking a look behind the scenes. And speaking of crude oil, while I was hunting around for something else to trade, crude oil slipped past me. Here was that sell signal we were waiting on. It finally printed. Would have hit our profit objective and has since fallen off somewhat. The good news is here we should get a retest. We should get a little bit of a hiccup here to the upside. And perhaps a retest of this 5150 area and maybe another chance to sell. But this is just crazy slow today in the NASDAQ. Not NASDAQ-ish at all. Even yesterday, the market was showing us some progress. If you were the more aggressive style trader, oh, I can't do my OCO, I have to go here to my Falcon. If you're the more aggressive style trader, we do have a little bit of a sideways range here. Which you could bracket, and a very quick trend change signal also going on here. I'm reluctant to sell because I got burned on the short side last time, but this is closer to a test of the extreme. So we'll see whether or not this has some follow through to it. Oh, actually got a positive slip. Now when we do the test of the extreme, you know that we normally anticipate the test of the extreme, this part here, to come up short and of the extreme price and then fail. Occasionally, we will see the test of the extreme come up to the extreme price or maybe even just a little bit higher and then fail. That's what I'm hoping we're seeing this time, because we rallied up here, hit the secondary resistance line, and then came back, made a real quick little trend change signal here. I should be a buyer today. My sell signal failed. I'm probably asking for it. What I was going to suggest to you is that this little sideways range that we saw here, if you wanted to be really aggressive on it, you could bracket that sideways range. and buy above, sell below. Possible first micro macro cross building here to the downside. Once again, not the most promising because of this congestion that we're seeing. Oh, and now we're back into yellow bars, so that pretty much nixes that idea. The smart money would stay out until we get outside that range. Or you get a pretty tempting looking setup, something that looks very, very solid. Oh, our soybean trade getting a little bit of traction on our breakout. So contending with this resistance here now at that 1029 area, that's important that we get above there. So hopefully the bean trade will work out. All right, I'm going to snoop around, see what I can find, if anything is interesting is going on. Oh, brother, come on, sellers. You keep teasing us, or me, And then you walk away from the table. Let's go. Oh, man. There they go again. Lance is asking, I keep hearing short and long setups being called on my charts, but when I look at the charts, I don't see a circle, meaning the warning dot. He says, is it possible for a call to produce an audio warning to produce and then for the signal not to be on the chart? Yes, it is. Because the conditions, if the market ticks a tick the other way, then all of a sudden the conditions that cause the warning dot to appear may no longer be there. Again, that's part of the problem of these slower markets. See if we can shoot a trend line across the eagle here. Isn't that an ugly looking chart? Wow. Well, I'm looking around, but there's nothing really going on in any of the markets. Crude oil has since gone flat. And as soon as I say that, they start pushing a little bit lower, but not much. Josh says or asks, Yellen will be yelling this afternoon. Could this be the reason the market is stuck? Perhaps. But you know what, folks? This is actually a happy market. Yes, I know it doesn't make us happy, but this market is perfectly content with the NASDAQ trading at 45.60. It thinks that's a fair value for the NQ, and it has no reason to go higher or lower. So when you see a sideways market like this, the market's actually pretty darn happy. It's miserable for us to trade, which is why I say, there's no point in trying anything until we get outside of this trading range. And if you do attempt something, be aware that it's like throwing a dart. It may work, it may not work. There's no real solid setup here that we can build off of. Some of you will have heard me refer to this type of thing as some traders call it barbed wire, and you can see why. Looks like a strand of barbed wire, and of course, just like barbed wire, it's pretty easy to get hurt trading it. No, the smart thing to do is just to leave it alone for a little while. It's 7:30 now, 10:30 in the East. Sometimes this is when the market reverses on itself, but for the most part, the market remains bullish. I know I'm short, but I was hoping for a little bit more follow through on that early trend change signal. Right now, it's still waffling. The trade may work out, it may not. I would love to see one more red bar here. I'm tempted to roll my stop in above this bar. In fact, you know what? That's the prudent thing to do. I should roll my stop in above that high. And that's all I'm going to give them. I would dearly love to see this bar turn red, trade lower. Then I would know that this is the correct spot to leave my stop. But I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive on it, roll the stop in regardless. They're setting up like they want to head lower, but there's just not much follow through. Oh, they're not playing nice today at all. Oh, Jesus is asking a question about the Logi counter. He says he's got the Raptor. How do I get those fancy little numbers at the end there in the green and the red? That's your tool called the Logi counter. That's this guy right here. So in your assortment, look for IW Logi counter. It's going to be with all these tools here that say IW in front of them. And there it is. Logi counter, double click on it. It will appear down here. And then all you need to do is apply. And what it does is it forecasts where the bar will close. So if it closes higher, it's going to close 45.63 and a quarter, and if it closes lower, it's going to be 45.59 and a quarter. It's helpful determining where the hash mark might print if we get an interesting looking signal. This is actually building into a bit of a double pullback. Look at the this morning's range, how tight it is. Is that not just a crazy range? What you could do, set a buy stop above, set a sell stop below, and that would be the most reasonable trade I can think of. I would dearly love to see this head lower. That would give us our test of the extreme and a chance to confirm that the market is ready to head lower. Yeah, like Jim says, I'd sure love to see a test of the lower end, test of the lower extreme. Come on down. Oh, here we go. We might finally be seeing a little bit of follow through. Overall, though, the market still bullish, and why do I say that? Well, because of the eagle. If you look at this chart, if you put this chart in front of an 8-year-old and you said, is this going up, down, or sideways? He would say it's going up. And therefore, the market is going up. Boy, it's almost painful. Well, you know what, folks? I was going to hang in until 8 o'clock, but really, I think I'm going to shut down the room a little bit early and get ready for my appointment, actually show up early for my appointment at 8:30. If you are trading, well, I think the smart thing to do is wait for the market to get outside of this range. It really is. It's perfectly content to go sideways this morning. Crude oil has been heading lower, still waiting for a little bit of a reaction to the breakout that we saw to the downside. So Definitely look for selling opportunities for crude. It would be nice if we got a selling opportunity back around here, around 51.40, 51.50. That would be ideal. Soybeans, we're still nursing our soybean trade, although they've slipped a little bit from where they were. If I had to put dollars to donuts, I would still favor a move to the downside. I think markets that are reluctant to head higher tend to gravitate toward a move lower. So when in doubt, maybe look at shorting, but it's tough because this market, as I said, is still very much in an uptrend. All right, you guys, I will catch you again tomorrow morning. Hopefully Friday's session will shake up a little bit. It certainly can't continue this way for too much longer. All right, you guys, talk to you later. Bye for now.